My girlfriend of 5 years asked for a situationship after meeting my boss. I couldn't believe it. This left me completely broken. I always believed relationships needed balance, career on one side, love on the other. Emma understood that. Or at least I thought she did. She never complained about my long hours, my meetings, or the occasional business trip. We had something steady, predictable. I liked that. So when Emma suggested meeting my boss at our company party, I didn't think much of it. But maybe that was my first mistake. The annual company party was supposed to be nothing more than a formality. A few drinks, some networking, and polite conversations that I'd forget by Monday. Emma had never shown much interest in my work beyond the usual, "How was your day?" But this year, she was different. "I want to meet Thomas," she had said, her voice carrying an eagerness I hadn't heard before. Thomas. My boss. The man was practically a living legend in the tech world, but why would Emma care? I brushed it off, thinking she was just trying to be supportive, trying to take an interest in my life. After all, we'd been together for 2 years. Maybe it was her way of bridging the gap that my career sometimes created. When we finally made our way to Thomas, he was standing at the center of a crowd, his booming laughter filling the room. He saw me approach and waved us over. "Jake." He greeted me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Good to see you, man. And this must be your lovely girlfriend." Thomas's eyes moved to Emma, and suddenly, it was like I wasn't there. His charm, effortless and magnetic, swept over her like a wave. Emma, who was always calm and poised, blushed. Blushed. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a punch to my gut. "This is Emma," I said, a little awkwardly. "She's a graphic designer. Works freelance." "Oh, really?" Thomas's eyes lit up. "I've always been fascinated by design. What kind of projects are you working on?" Emma smiled, her smile, but something about it seemed brighter, more interested. "A little bit of everything," she replied smoothly. "Right now, I'm exploring branding for a few startups." I stood there, listening to them chat, feeling more like an outsider with every passing second. I should have been happy that Emma was making a connection, but the way Thomas looked at her, the way she leaned in when he spoke, it was all too familiar. I'd seen this dynamic before, but never with her. The rest of the night, Emma stayed close to Thomas. Their conversation flowed effortlessly from design to business to travel, while I stood by, making small talk with colleagues. It was hard to shake the unease that had crept in. As the night wore on, I noticed something else. Emma wasn't paying attention to me. Not like she usually did. Her focus, her energy, was directed entirely at Thomas. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. I told myself she was just trying to be polite, just making conversation. But deep down, I knew something had changed. In the car, I tried to break the silence. "So, you seem to really hit it off with Thomas." Emma didn't respond right away. She stared out the window, her fingers tapping against her thigh. Finally, she said, "He's really interesting, Jake. So driven. And he's done so much with his life." I nodded, keeping my eyes on the road. "Yeah, he's successful. He's also, my boss." "Exactly," she murmured. "He's everything you've been working towards." I didn't like the way she said it. Like I was chasing something that wasn't mine to have. Like I was still on the outside, looking in. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more subtle changes. Emma's texts became shorter, her calls less frequent. When we were together, she seemed distracted, her mind elsewhere. It wasn't like she was pulling away entirely, but there was a noticeable distance. I'd catch her staring off into space, and when I asked what she was thinking, she'd just shrug it off with a simple, "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. I could feel it. Something had shifted after that night at the party. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but the space between us was growing. One evening, as we sat in our usual spot on the couch, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled, that smile. The one she hadn't given me in weeks. Without thinking, I asked, "Who is it?" She looked up, startled, and then quickly put her phone face down on the coffee table. "Just a friend," she said casually. But I wasn't stupid. I could read the signs. The late-night texts. The sudden interest in my boss. The conversations that lingered a little too long. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was piling up in front of me. Is this really happening? I thought. Is this how it ends? It's strange how a single moment, like a text message or a smile, can start to eat away at you. It's not that things between Emma and me suddenly fell apart, it was more like a slow drift. The kind that you don't notice until you look up one day and realize the person you thought you knew feels like a stranger. But I wasn't ready to admit that yet. I was still clinging to what I thought we had. The morning after that text, I woke up earlier than usual. Emma was still asleep, her face relaxed, peaceful. For a second, I almost convinced myself that things were fine. That the tension, the awkwardness, was just in my head. But as I stood there, looking at her, I felt hollow. I had this urge to wake her up, to talk, to ask her what was really going on. But I couldn't. I didn't want to come off as paranoid or insecure. So I did what I always did when things got complicated, I pushed it down. By the time Emma woke up, I was already halfway through my coffee, pretending to read an article on my phone. She walked into the kitchen, her steps slower than usual. "Morning," she mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. "Morning," I replied, watching her over the rim of my mug. She didn't make eye contact, just stood there, stirring sugar into her coffee absent-mindedly. I waited for her to say something, anything, but the silence stretched on. "Got any plans today?" I asked, trying to fill the space. Emma shrugged. "Just work stuff. I'm meeting a client later." I nodded, forcing a smile. "That's good." But it wasn't good. Not really. Over the next few days, I started paying more attention to the little things. Emma's phone was always close by, and she was texting more than usual. At first, I told myself it was work. She had freelance clients, after all. But something about the way she guarded her phone, how she'd tilt it just out of my line of sight, didn't sit right with me. One evening, I tried to bring it up, casually. "You've been busy lately," I said, keeping my tone light. "Yeah," she replied without looking up from her laptop. "Lots of projects." "That's good," I said, then added, "You seem different." That got her attention. She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Different? How?" "I don't know," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "You just seem distant." Emma frowned, closing her laptop. "Distant? I've just been working a lot, Jake. It's nothing." Nothing. That word again. It felt like a wall between us, and no matter how much I tried, I couldn't climb over it. I wanted to push, to ask her what was really going on, but I hesitated. I didn't want to seem controlling, or worse, desperate. It was a Wednesday night when things finally came to a head. We were sitting on the couch, watching some mindless TV show that neither of us was really paying attention to. I glanced at Emma, and she was on her phone again, her fingers tapping out a message. She smiled, that smile. The one she used to give me. I couldn't take it anymore. "Who are you texting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emma looked up, surprised. "What?" You've been on your phone a lot lately." She frowned, putting her phone down. "It's just work, Jake." "Is it?" She stared at me, and I could see the shift in her eyes, something hard, defensive. "What are you trying to say?" I took a deep breath. This was it. The conversation I'd been avoiding for weeks. "I don't know, Emma. You've been different, distant, and I can't shake the feeling that something's going on." She sighed, leaning back against the couch. "Jake, nothing's going on. I've just been busy with work. You know how it is." But I didn't buy it. "Not anymore. You barely talk to me anymore," I said quietly. "And when we do talk, it's like, you're not even here." Emma didn't respond right away. She just stared at the TV, her face tense, as if she was trying to figure out what to say next. Finally, she spoke. "Jake, I need to tell you something." My stomach twisted. I knew whatever was coming wasn't good. "I've been thinking about us," she said, her voice soft but steady. "About where we are." I nodded, bracing myself. "Okay. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," she continued, her eyes still on the TV. "For the commitment. The seriousness. It feels heavy. Heavy." That word hit me harder than I expected. "What do you mean by that?" Emma sighed, finally turning to look at me. "I mean, I care about you, Jake. I really do. But I've been thinking, maybe we should take a step back. You know, not put so much pressure on ourselves. Maybe we should be more casual." Casual. The word hung in the air between us like a cloud of smoke, suffocating and thick. Casual, I repeated, trying to process what she was saying. Yeah, she said, her tone light, as if she was suggesting something as simple as changing dinner plans. Like, a situationship. You know. No labels, no expectations. I stared at her, my mind racing. A situationship. After 2 years together. What are you saying, Emma? You want to, what? Stop being exclusive. She didn't answer right away, but her silence was enough. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Emma, the woman I'd spent the last 2 years with, was asking me to downgrade our relationship. To go from something solid to something temporary. Uncertain. I felt the weight of it settling in my chest. Why? Emma shrugged, avoiding my eyes. I don't want to feel tied down. I'm not ready for something serious. I need more freedom. Freedom. Another word that stung. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to get up, to walk out, to tell her that if she didn't want to be with me, she should just say it. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, still wanted this to work, kept me rooted to the spot. Was I supposed to be okay with this? Was I supposed to just nod and smile and pretend that everything was fine? Jake. Emma's voice broke through my thoughts. I looked at her, feeling numb. I don't know what to say. You don't have to decide anything right now, she said quickly. I wanted to be honest with you. I don't want to hurt you. Too late. I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. Yeah, okay. Emma smiled, relief washing over her face. Thanks for understanding. But I didn't understand. Not really. And as I sat there, watching her pick up her phone again, I realized that things between us would never be the same. I never thought silence could be so loud. After our conversation about a situationship, things didn't get better. The more I tried to make sense of it, the more everything felt wrong. It wasn't just that Emma wanted something different. It was that I had no idea who she was anymore. Each morning, I woke up to a version of Emma I didn't recognize. She moved around our apartment like a stranger, no more playful smiles, no more casual intimacy. It was like we were just two people who happened to live in the same space, sharing nothing but awkward glances and shallow words. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave. Not yet. For the next few weeks, I did my best to act like everything was fine. We still had dinners together. We still watched TV. But it was all mechanical. There was no spark, no connection. Even our conversations felt forced, like we were trying too hard to pretend this new version of our relationship was normal. Hey, how was work? I'd ask, my voice flat, barely masking my disappointment. Emma would respond the same way every time, busy, but fine. She never elaborated, never offered any details. Just the same routine answer. It was like pulling teeth to get her to talk to me beyond surface-level stuff. And then, she'd pick up her phone and disappear into that digital world I couldn't access. I tried not to let it get to me. I really did. But every time I saw her texting or smiling at her screen, that feeling in my gut twisted tighter. I wanted to ask who she was talking to, but I didn't want to come off as paranoid. I didn't want to admit to myself that I was slowly losing her. One night, a few weeks after she'd first suggested the situationship, we were sitting at dinner, and I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The tension had been building up inside me, and I knew if I didn't say something, I'd explode. We were eating spaghetti, something simple, something familiar. But nothing felt familiar about the space between us. Emma was scrolling through her phone as I pushed my food around my plate, trying to gather the courage to speak up. Emma, I finally said, my voice tight. She looked up, eyebrows raised, like I'd startled her out of a dream. Yeah, I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the fork a little too tightly. Are we still together? Like, as a couple? She blinked, her phone still in her hand. Jake, we've talked about this. I know, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. But I don't get it. We've been together for 2 years, and now, what? You want something casual? Emma sighed, setting her phone down. It's not that I don't care about you. I do. But I need space. Space for what? I asked, my frustration bubbling to the surface. To figure out what I want, she said, her voice calm, as if she was explaining something simple. I need time, Jake. I don't want to be tied down right now. I stared at her, the knot in my chest tightening. Tied down. Is that what this is to you? Some kind of burden. Emma shook her head. It's not about you. It's about me. I just need freedom to explore things. To see where life takes me. That word again, freedom. It cut deeper every time she said it. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like the ground was slipping out from under me. So what does that mean for us? I'm not saying I want to end things, she said quickly. I just think we need to redefine what this is. Less pressure, more flexibility. Flexibility, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Emma nodded, her expression soft, like she was trying to comfort me. Yeah, I think it could be good for us. We don't have to break up, but we don't have to be so committed either. Committed. The word hit me like a slap. 2 years of being by her side, through everything, and now she was asking for less commitment. Like everything we'd built wasn't enough anymore. I wanted to scream, to tell her that I wasn't okay with this. That I couldn't just sit around and pretend that our relationship hadn't changed. But instead, all I could manage was a single word, why? Emma sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Because I don't know what I want yet, Jake. I don't know if I'm ready for the kind of future we used to talk about. The house, the kids, all of that, it's just too much right now. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. So, what? You're keeping me around until you figure it out. That's not fair, Emma said, her tone defensive now. I'm being honest with you. I'm telling you what I need. Isn't that better than lying? Honest. I should have appreciated that. But the truth was, her honesty was more painful than any lie she could have told. And what about me? I asked, my voice shaking. What if I don't want this? What if I want more? Emma looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in weeks. Guilt. She bit her lip, hesitating for a moment before she finally spoke. I'm sorry, Jake. I really am. But I can't give you more right now. I sat there, my mind racing, trying to process everything she'd just said. Part of me wanted to fight for her, to convince her that we could make this work. But another part of me, the part that was exhausted from trying to hold everything together, just wanted to walk away. Could I really stay with someone who wasn't sure if they wanted me? Could I pretend that this situationship was enough when I knew deep down it wasn't? I felt torn between two sides of myself, the side that loved her and the side that knew I deserved better. But instead of voicing any of that, I just nodded. Okay. Emma's eyes softened, and she reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Thank you for understanding. I know this is hard, but I think it'll be good for us in the long run. Good for us. I wasn't so sure, but I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. As we finished dinner, I realized that we were still together, but not in the way we used to be. And maybe not in the way I wanted us to be. Over the next few weeks, things shifted even more. Emma stayed out late more often, work meetings, she said. I didn't question it. I didn't want to. Because deep down, I knew that if I started asking questions, I might not like the answers. The nights were the hardest. We still slept in the same bed, but it didn't feel the same. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Emma's soft breathing, wondering what she was thinking. Wondering if she was lying there too, thinking about how different things had become. Sometimes, I'd roll over and pull her close, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the physical closeness would bring back some of the emotional connection we'd lost. But even in those moments, I could feel the distance between us. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I started to piece things together. Emma had mentioned her boss more than once, Thomas, the new creative director. 34, married, no kids. I'd met him once at an office party. He was charismatic, the kind of guy who could charm his way through any conversation. At first, I didn't think much of it. Emma had always been ambitious, and she'd worked with plenty of male colleagues before. But something about the way she talked about Thomas felt different. There was an edge to it, a certain admiration in her voice that I hadn't heard before. One night, I casually asked, "How's work going?" "Still busy." Emma nodded, not looking up from her laptop. "Yeah, Thomas has been giving me a lot of new projects." There it was again, Thomas. I didn't say anything, but the knot in my chest tightened. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous boyfriend who couldn't handle his girlfriend working with another man. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than just work. As the days passed, I found myself questioning everything. I'd catch myself watching Emma more closely, trying to pick up on any signs that something was going on. The way she smiled at her phone, the late nights at the office, the way she seemed more distant than ever. I hated feeling like this, paranoid, insecure. It wasn't who I was. But the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger the feeling grew. Something wasn't right, and no matter how much I tried to convince myself otherwise, I couldn't shake the suspicion. But the question was, did I really want to know the truth? I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The silence between Emma and me had grown unbearable, thicker than the air in a stuffy room. I was tired of waiting for answers that wouldn't come, tired of the guessing and second guessing. It was time to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I needed clarity. I needed to know if there was anything left to save. The night before I decided to confront Emma, something snapped inside me. She'd come home late again, after 10 p.m., same excuse as always, work. But this time, something was different. She seemed off. Her eyes darted away from mine when I asked how her day had been. She didn't linger in the living room like she usually did after a long day. Instead, she went straight to the shower without saying much, avoiding conversation altogether. I knew, deep down, I knew. I sat on the couch, the TV playing some show I wasn't paying attention to, and my mind raced. My heart pounded in my chest as I went over every moment, every small sign, every clue I'd been too afraid to acknowledge. I couldn't push the doubts away any longer. Was it Thomas? Or was it just me, losing my grip? When she came out of the shower, I couldn't hold it in any longer. The words tumbled out of me, raw and unfiltered. Emma, is there someone else? She froze, towel wrapped around her, hair damp, looking at me like I'd just slapped her. What? She asked, her voice shaky. I stood up, my hands trembling. You've been distant, staying out late, always talking about Thomas. You don't even look at me the same anymore. I can't pretend like I don't see what's happening. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me, wide-eyed, as if she hadn't expected me to ask. And in that silence, I got my answer. Emma sighed, her shoulders slumping as she sat on the edge of the bed. Jake, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I asked, my voice harder than I intended. I didn't want to sound angry, but it was impossible to hide the frustration and hurt building up inside me. Just tell me the truth. I deserve that much. Emma looked down at her hands, her fingers fidgeting nervously. I didn't want it to come to this. I swear, I didn't plan for any of this to happen. But, yes, there's been something with Thomas. The air left my lungs. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, like the ground had just disappeared from beneath me. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing her say it out loud was a different kind of pain. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Not long, she said quickly, her eyes pleading. It's been a few months. We didn't do anything, Jake. Not physically. But, I don't know. We got close. We've been talking more, spending time together at work. It's not like I'm in love with him, but what? I cut in, my patience fraying. What is it, Emma? You said you wanted a situationship, that you needed space. Was that just so you could be with him? She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. No, it's not like that. I felt trapped. Not by you, but by everything. The relationship, the pressure, the expectations. And Thomas, I don't know. He made me feel free, like there were no strings attached. But I never wanted to hurt you. Too late for that. The words echoed in my mind, but I didn't say them. Instead, I just stood there, feeling completely numb. It was one thing to suspect Emma had feelings for someone else. It was another to hear her admit it. She hadn't physically cheated, but that didn't make it any easier to swallow. She'd emotionally detached herself from me, given a piece of herself to another man. A man she worked with. A man I'd never even considered a threat. I thought about all the nights she'd come home late, all the times she'd smiled at her phone, all the moments she'd pulled away from me without explanation. It all made sense now, like puzzle pieces clicking together to form a picture I didn't want to see. I didn't mean for it to happen, she repeated, her voice cracking. I didn't even realize how far it had gone until now. Until I asked, I said, bitterness creeping into my tone. Emma looked up at me, her eyes full of guilt and regret. Jake, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to lose you. But you already have, I replied, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Emma flinched like I'd hit her, and for a moment, we just sat there in the heavy silence of our crumbling relationship. I stood there, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion. Every part of me wanted to lash out, to scream at her, to demand to know how she could throw away everything we'd built for a flirtation with her boss. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't solve anything. The damage was done. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. So what happens now? I asked, my voice flat. Are you planning to be with him? Emma shook her head frantically. No, Jake, I don't want to be with Thomas. I don't even know what I want anymore. All I know is that I don't want to lose you. I don't want to throw everything away. I didn't know how to respond to that. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to fight for us anymore. The trust was shattered. Could I really move past this? Could I live knowing that the person I loved, the person I thought I'd build a future with, had drifted so far away? I can't do this, I said finally, my voice shaking. I can't be in a relationship where I'm wondering if I'm enough. Where I'm competing with someone else. Emma's face crumpled, and she covered her mouth with her hand to stifle a sob. Please, Jake, don't leave. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to therapy, or take a break. Just don't walk away. I'll do anything. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could fix things, that we could go back to the way we were before. But deep down, I knew we couldn't. This wasn't just about Thomas. This was about the fact that she didn't know what she wanted anymore, and I couldn't be in limbo, waiting for her to figure it out. I need time, I said, my voice barely audible. I need space to think. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay, I understand. I grabbed my keys from the table, my heart heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to get out of there. I couldn't be in the same space as her, not after everything I'd just heard. As I reached the door, I turned back to look at her one last time. I love you, Emma, I said quietly. But I can't keep doing this. With that, I walked out, closing the door behind me. Sitting in my car, I stared at the empty road ahead, my mind still reeling. Part of me felt relief that I'd finally confronted the truth, that I wasn't trapped in the dark anymore. But another part of me felt hollow. Empty. I thought about the last 2 years, all the memories we'd built, all the love we'd shared. It was hard to believe it had come to this. But in the end, I knew it wasn't my fault. Emma had made her choices, and now I had to make mine. I wasn't sure where we'd go from here, or if there was even a future for us. But one thing was clear, I couldn't be in a relationship where I was just an option. As I drove off into the night, I realized that sometimes, love isn't enough. And no matter how much it hurts, sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away.